I grew up in a quiet corner of our village, where the wind carried the smell of dust and firewood, and where every family's laughter rose like morning smoke. But in my home, laughter was something I only heard from outside the walls. Inside, everything felt heavy, like the air itself carried a secret no one wanted to breathe. My earliest memories are not of being held or comforted, but of watching my mother's eyes darken whenever I entered a room. She moved like a storm that never fully passed, and I learned to measure her footsteps the way hunters listen for lions at night. If her steps were slow, I stayed silent. If they were fast, I hid my face and made myself small. She wasn't the kind of mother other children spoke about. She didn't braid my hair, or teach me songs, or hold my hand when the rains frightened me. She watched me the way someone watches a fire they cannot control. Sometimes I felt like my very existence offended her, like every breath I took was a reminder of something she wanted to forget. My father, on the other hand, tried to soften the edges of our home. He would sit beside me in the evenings and teach me how to carve shapes from fallen branches. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were tired in a way I didn't understand back then. He never raised his voice, not even when my mother shouted at both of us. And she did, often. Whenever she scolded me, he stayed silent. Whenever she insulted me, he bowed his head. It confused me as a child. I thought fathers were supposed to protect their daughters, especially when the danger came from within the house. But as I grew, I began to see the fear in him, fear of her anger, fear of the truth behind her anger, fear of something much older than both of them. The village noticed things, of course. In a place where everyone knows everyone, nothing goes unseen. Women whispered behind clay pots, and men exchanged glances when my family walked past. But whenever I asked what they were whispering about, they'd smile too quickly and say, "Child, some stories are not for young ears." But I heard the pieces anyway. She treats that girl like she's her enemy. Her spirit has never been settled. No wonder the husband looks older every season. Children in the village rarely spoke to me. Not because they disliked me, but because their mothers often pulled them away gently, as if being near me would involve them in something dangerous, something sacred, something wrong. My mother's moods were unpredictable. Some mornings she wouldn't speak to me at all. Other mornings she would wake me before sunrise, blaming me for things I didn't do, spilled water, a missing cloth, a pot left crooked on the fire. Her anger felt rehearsed, as if she needed a reason each day to push me away. Even as a child, I sensed something deeper behind her eyes. It wasn't simple hatred. It was pain shaped like a secret that had grown teeth. Still, I tried to win her love. I collected firewood before she asked. I swept the yard until my palms blistered. I memorized her favorite meals and prepared them exactly the way she liked. Nothing worked. My efforts were drops of water on burning stone. One afternoon, during the girls' initiation season, all the daughters of our age group gathered under the baobab tree to learn from the elder women. As we sat in a circle, the oldest among them, a woman whose skin carried more stories than wrinkles, looked at me for a long moment. I tried to lower my gaze, but she touched my chin lightly and said, "Child, your mother walks with the weight of two roles that were never meant to belong to one woman." I didn't understand what she meant, but her voice had the tone of someone who wanted to say more yet feared the consequences. Before I could ask anything, another elder called her away. Those words stayed with me for weeks. They echoed in my dreams, in my chores, in the silence of our home. Two roles? Never meant to belong to one woman? Every time I looked at my mother after that, I felt I was missing something obvious, standing right in front of me, like a shadow cast by a tree I had never noticed before. The turning point came late one evening. The moon was a thin silver line, barely touching the earth with its light. I had accidentally broken a calabash bowl while washing it. It slipped through my fingers and cracked on the stones. When my mother saw the pieces, her rage erupted like a river bursting through a dam. She struck me, not out of discipline, but out of something deeper, something sharp and wild that frightened even her. My father rushed to hold her back, and when she realized he was watching, she froze. She didn't apologize. She simply turned away, shaking, breathing as if she had been running. That night, lying on my mat with tears drying on my cheeks, I felt something shift inside me. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was a sense of clarity. My mother did not hate me because of who I was. She hated me because of something she saw when she looked at me. Something connected to a past I knew nothing about. I didn't know the truth yet. But I knew, with every beat of my heart, that the story of our family was not what it appeared to be. And whatever the secret was, it lived in the silence between my parents. It lived in the whispering of the elders. It lived in the eyes of a mother who could not love her daughter. I just didn't know that the truth would destroy everything I thought I understood about where I came from, and who I belonged to. The night everything changed began like any other, quiet, warm, and filled with the humming of insects weaving their songs into the darkness. But my heart felt unsettled. The memory of my mother's outburst lingered inside me like smoke that refused to clear. I needed answers. Not rumors. Not whispers. Answers. In our village, every family keeps a record of their bloodline, folded leaves inked with symbols, tucked away in clay pots or wooden chests. It is our way of remembering who we come from and who we must never become. My father kept our family record in a carved wooden box beneath his sleeping mat. I knew this only because I once saw him place it there after a long meeting with the elders. His face that evening had been pale with worry, though he tried to smile when he saw me watching. That night, long after both my parents had gone to sleep, I pushed aside my mat and inched toward their room. My hands trembled, not just from fear of being caught, but from the fear that I might discover something I wasn't meant to see. The moonlight slipped through the cracks in the hut's walls, guiding me as I reached under the edge of my father's mat. My fingers brushed wood. I pulled the box out slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't creak. When I lifted the lid, the smell of old leaves and dust rose into the air. Inside were folded documents, a necklace of cowrie shells, and a small wooden carving of a woman holding a child. I unfolded the top leaf. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The symbols were clear names, lines of ancestry, the stories of births and unions. But something didn't match what I had been told my whole life. There was my father's name. Below it, the name of a woman I had never heard spoken aloud. Below her name, my mother's. Not as a wife. As a daughter. My breath caught. I thought I must be reading it wrong. I blinked hard, wiped my eyes, and looked again. No. It was unmistakable. My mother was listed under Children of the Forbidden Line. My hands shook violently, and the leaf almost tore between my fingers. I had to swallow the scream rising in my throat. If my parents woke now, I would never know the rest. I dug deeper into the box and found another leaf. This one was older, the symbols faded. But the meaning was impossible to mistake. My father had broken a sacred law of the tribe, one written in every initiation, carved into the elders' stools, spoken during every marriage ceremony. No union shall be made within the sacred blood. This law was older than our village. Older than the oldest elder who still walked the earth. It was meant to protect families from spiritual sickness, from curses that cling to generations, from madness that grows in the shadows of hidden sins. But my father had violated it. Not out of passion or romance. But out of weakness, or perhaps something darker. My mother's mother, the woman whose name I had never heard, was his own blood. His own family. I felt cold all over. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, louder than the night insects, louder than the wind. Everything suddenly made sense, the whispers, my mother's unpredictable rage, the way the village looked at us, the way the elders avoided talking about her birth. She had been born from a union that should never have happened, a union the ancestors themselves would have condemned. And yet, she had been forced to live with it. But the box held even more. At the bottom was a folded cloth stained with something dark, maybe age, maybe tears. Wrapped inside it was a letter, rare in our village. It was addressed to the Council of Elders. With trembling hands, I opened it. The words inside felt like fire burning through my chest. I fear the child will never know peace. She is born of my mistake. I take full responsibility. I will raise her as both father and husband if I must, to protect the tribe from shame. Father and husband. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. My mother had grown up knowing this. Knowing she was both daughter and wife to the same man. Knowing the village watched her with pity or disgust. Knowing she could not escape the shadow of the mistake that created her. No wonder she was filled with rage. No wonder she could not love me. She had never learned love. Only duty. Only shame. I placed everything back exactly as I found it and returned the box quietly. Then I slipped outside, unable to stay in that hut a moment longer. The night air was cold, and the stars above me looked sharper than usual, like the sky itself was watching. My legs carried me to the elder's house without me thinking. I pushed the door aside and stepped inside. Their fire was still burning low, as if waiting for me. 5 elders sat around it, their faces carved with wisdom and fear. They had been expecting this moment. I could see it in their eyes. The oldest woman spoke first. You have read what was hidden. I nodded, unable to speak. Another elder sighed deeply. Your mother was never meant to be born. The ancestors warned us. The bloodline was sacred. Your father broke the law, and the village carried the shame in silence. I stumbled back. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did I have to grow up thinking my mother hated me for no reason? The elder closest to me lifted her hand gently. Children are protected from truths that can destroy their spirit. But you were already living in the fire. We only hoped it would not burn you completely. I felt tears streaming down my face. My mother was his daughter. Yes, the elder whispered. And that truth devoured her. She could not be a child. Then she could not be a wife. Her identity was stolen before she learned her own name. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then the oldest elder added, you must decide what this truth means for you. The sins of your parents are not your destiny, unless you allow them to be. Her words settled in my heart like heavy stones. My life was no longer what I thought it was. My family was not what it seemed. My mother's cruelty was not born from hatred alone, but from the unbearable weight of a past she never chose. And my father. He was not the gentle, helpless man I believed him to be. He was the beginning of everything broken. As I walked back home before sunrise, the world felt different. Quiet. Hollow. Changed. The truth was now mine. And nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The sun had not yet risen when I returned home from the elder's house. The sky was still dark, holding on to the last breath of night, as if even the heavens hesitated to begin a new day after the truth I had uncovered. My feet were heavy, my eyes swollen, and every step toward the hut felt like walking deeper into a story I no longer wanted to be part of. Inside, the fire had died to glowing embers. My father sat beside it, elbows on his knees, staring into the orange dust that pulsed like a heartbeat. He looked like a man waiting for a sentence he already knew he deserved. He didn't turn when I entered. He must have heard me approach, but silence wrapped around him so tightly that even words seemed afraid to touch him. "Father," I finally whispered. He flinched. Slowly, he lifted his head and met my eyes. There was no surprise in his face. Only sorrow, a sorrow so deep it looked like it had been living inside him for decades. "You know," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. My throat tightened. "I know everything." He closed his eyes, and for a moment, I saw him not as the father who taught me how to carve wood, not as the quiet man who shielded me from my mother's rage, but as someone who had been drowning for years, and had chosen to drag others under with him instead of facing the waves. "I never wanted your life to be shaped by my mistake," he murmured. "But mistakes do not stay buried, even if you cover them with years." The room felt colder than the dawn outside. "You destroyed her," I said, my voice trembling. "You stole her childhood. You stole her identity. You made her live a life that should never have existed." He bowed his head. His shoulders shook. "I was young. Foolish. I thought I could fix what I had broken by taking responsibility for it. I thought if I raised her myself, if I kept her close, I could protect her from the shame. But you didn't protect her," I said. "You imprisoned her. And then you married her." He winced as if I had struck him. "I know how it sounds. I know what it was. But the elders, they told me the tribe could not bear another scandal. They told me to keep quiet, to raise her privately, to make her part of my household. They said it was the only way." "Was it their idea?" I asked, "or yours?" He didn't answer. And in his silence, I found the truth. I felt anger rising in my chest, not wild like my mother's, but sharp, cold, controlled. The kind of anger that doesn't scream, but decides. Before either of us could speak again, the door curtain shifted, and my mother stepped into the room. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes swollen from a night of restless sleep. She looked at me, then at my father, and something in her expression told me she already knew what I had discovered. She didn't speak at first. She simply sank to her knees on the floor, as if the weight of her life had finally broken her spine. For the first time in my life, she looked small. Not fierce. Not angry. Not dominant. Just small. "You found out," she said, her voice raw. "I felt it the moment you left the house last night. The truth has been chasing me all my life. Now it has caught you too." I expected her to deny it, or to lash out, or to blame me. Instead, she began to cry, quietly, painfully, like someone whose tears had been trapped for years behind a wall. "When I was young," she whispered, "I did not understand why the other children avoided me. I didn't know why the women looked at me with pity. I only knew that I did not belong anywhere. Not as a daughter. Not as a girl. Not as a woman." She looked at me then, and for the first time, her gaze did not carry hatred. It carried exhaustion. Grief. Regret. "They told me I must marry him," she continued. "They said it was the only way to protect the tribe. They said I had no other future." My father buried his face in his hands. My mother's voice shook as she added, "I never learned what it means to be loved by someone who is not afraid of you. And I could not give love to you, my child, because every time I looked at you, I saw the chains I was born with. I saw the life I never chose." Her words pierced me, but not in the way they once would have. Now I understood the shape of her suffering. Her cruelty had not come from malice, it had come from a life twisted by shame and silence. I sat down beside her. Not close enough to touch, but close enough for her to know I was listening. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "I just can't carry your pain anymore. It belongs to you, not to me." She wept harder, covering her face with trembling hands. My father looked up at me with eyes full of desperate hope. "What will you do now?" The answer had been forming in my heart since the moment I unfolded the first leaf in the wooden box. "I will leave," I said. "I cannot grow in a house built on secrets. I cannot build my future in the ruins of yours." Neither of them tried to stop me. For once, they understood. I gathered only what I needed: my cloth, my sandals, a small pouch of grain. As I stepped outside, the first light of morning spread across the village, turning the world gold. The baobab tree stood tall in the distance, its branches reaching like arms raised in blessing or farewell. I walked toward it slowly, feeling the weight of my past fall away with each step. When I reached its trunk, I placed my hand on the rough bark. The tree had seen generations rise and fall, secrets kept and revealed, unions blessed and forbidden. It had stood through every storm, holding every truth quietly in its roots. "I end this with me," I whispered. "My mother's pain. My father's sin. The shame of a story no child should inherit. It stops here." The wind rose gently, circling me like a promise. I turned toward the open plains beyond the village, the unknown, the untouched, the free, and began walking. I did not look back. Not because I didn't care, but because the future finally belonged to me.